Hello and welcome back to another Wednesday workshop here from the Mabton School District. Today we are looking at the skill of no opt-out. We have been discussing how to create a classroom culture that values and expects error, and what that's going to do if you have established a culture of error, then students are now more willing to answer questions. But sometimes even with that culture of error, we have students who don't answer. And that is for a variety of reasons. And so this is where no opt-out comes in. And it helps us to increase rigor and achievement in our classrooms. Let's get started with the video.
You have to fail in order to climb that ladder. There's no one that doesn't fail. Michael Jordan said in one of his interviews, when they said, "You're unbelievable, you're the greatest basketball player of all times." I mean, tell me about that. And he says, "Well, you're just mentioning the successes." But he says, "For me to become the greatest basketball player, I missed 9,000 shots when I was playing basketball at the NBA games." So during these games that he was so successful, he missed 9,000 shots. Does it make him a failure? No. He's one of the greatest basketball players of all times, but he failed 9,000 times. Do you get it? We all fail. It's okay. What is not okay is that when you fail, you stay down. Whoever stays down is a loser. And winners will fail and get up, fail and get up, fail and get up. You always get up. That is a winner. That is a winner. I failed in bodybuilding. I lost bodybuilding competitions. I lost powerlifting competitions. I lost weightlifting competitions. I had movies that went in the toilet and that were terrible and got the worst reviews. And in politics, I remember I had many of the initiatives on the ballot and we lost. My approval rating in California went down to 28%. And then it went back up again and they won again the governorship. Hey, we all lose. We all have losses. This is okay. And this is why I say don't be worried about losing, because when you're afraid of losing, then you get frozen. You get stiff. You're not relaxed. You got to be, in order to perform well in anything, if it's in boxing or if it is on your job or with your thinking, is only happening when you relax. So relax. It's okay to fail. Let's just go all out and give it everything that you got. That's what it is all about. So don't be afraid to fail.
What you do when a student doesn't answer a question you've asked plays a major part in shaping your academic expectations for your classroom. So teachers who use the no opt-out strategy, whether they know they're using it or not, ensure that when a student is unable or more than likely unwilling to answer a question, knows that by the end that the student is going to answer correctly. They're going to be re-engaged into the lesson and held accountable for the learning. So no opt-out raises academic expectations and rigor by building a culture of individual accountability. And there's really no reward for not trying. If I ask a student a question and they say, "I don't know," and then I move on, that student has learned that they can just say, "I don't know," shrug their shoulders and roll their eyes, and they don't have to do the work. They don't have to think. And also that informs the rest of the class that they can do the same. So it sends a signal to the entire class that they can be passive in your classroom and they don't have to work. It also raises rigor and expectation by causing students to rehearse success, hearing themselves getting the answers right when they initially could not. So students who have traditionally struggled in classrooms come into school thinking, I'm not going to be successful. I'm not a good student. I'm not smart. I can't do this. And so most of their prior experiences have left them feeling unable and inadequate to do the work. When we use no opt out, and we'll look at some of these strategies in just a minute, you are providing opportunities for your students to practice being right. Even if it wasn't rigorous to get to the answer, it's now giving them practice on how to respond correctly and that feeling of having a correct answer and what that does in the brain. So when a student answers a question correctly, you can just increase that positivity and you can increase the rigor by adding a little bit more. And again, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So teachers who use no opt out, they are trying to help students get to the right answer. And there's a couple of different ways, well, four really, to get there. And there's no wrong or right way. There's no wrong or right format for helping your students get to the correct answer. So we're going to be looking at these different formats and looking at some examples. All right, so first up is format one. This is where you provide, as the teacher, the answer and the student repeats it. So there's a script here, and there's also a video example. So let's watch the video now.
At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though you've got little brown insects crawling about all over you. People will think you've got lice." Aaliyah. What does it mean to snap at someone? Aaliyah. Good! So read it again.
Be quiet.
Oh, you can snap better than that.
Be quiet. The father snapped.
Do it, Q-Ain.
Be quiet.
Good. Aaliyah, try it.
Be quiet. The father snapped. Just keep your nasty mouth shut, will you? And in all, it was a most significant,
Satisfactory.
exercise.
Satisfactory exercise.
Satisfactory exercise.
Read the sentence again.
All in all, it was a most satisfactory exercise, but it was surely too much to hope that it had taught the father a permanent lesson.
Good. How did Matilda feel at the end of this chapter?
All right, so in this video, you saw a group reading, and when a student did not read to the expectations that the teacher had for that portion of the book, the teacher asked the student, what does it mean to snap at someone? And when the student didn't answer correctly, she provided an example, right? She snapped at her. She was still being friendly, and obviously the student recognized that, but it helped her to understand. Of course, she needed a little bit of encouragement from another student to really get in there, but she was given the answer and the cue from the teacher. All right, format two. This is where another student, and it can actually be the entire class if you want, provides the answer and the student repeats it. Let's look at an example of this.
Okay, scholars. So, today we're going to read a book called Clever Fox. The title of our book is Clever Fox. The title of our book is Clever Fox. Does anyone know what clever means? What does clever mean? What does clever mean? Kayla, do you know what clever means?
No.
No. Okay, Isaiah.
Clever means smart.
Clever means that you're really smart. Kayla, what does clever mean?
Clever means smart.
Clever means that you're smart. So looking at the front cover, what do you notice? What do you notice?
All right, so in this we see a small reading group, and the teacher really targets the student that she calls on. All of the other students raised their hand, but she wanted to make sure that particular student was aware of what clever meant. And so she asked her, she said she didn't know, and asked another student, and then had that student respond with the correct answer. So pretty easy, pretty low level, but helps that student to pay attention to what the group is talking about, but also feel successful. All right, format 3. This is where the teacher provides a cue or a hint or a clarifying question maybe, and then the students use that to answer. Let's look at an example of this.
Okay, so who dreams the American dream? There's no one answer to this question. So who dreams the American dream? Tia, start us off in the front.
I skipped that question.
Oh, because you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know who.
What's the thing about writing class? Who did you read about that was working? You don't remember anything from writing? That's so sad. You're going to make Miss Catlett cry. Okay, who thinks they can give Tia a hint? Give Tia a hint. Don't tell her the answer. Give her the hint. Someone from a writing class. Andrew, you ready to give her a hint? No. Yeah, that's a great hint. First of all, 2 snaps for Andrew on 2. 1, 2. Go ahead.
Chinese people? I don't know. One of those.
Oh, Andrew, would Chinese people you think also fit in the same category?
Yes.
Interesting. So now we got people from China, people from Mexico. What could he be talking about? Well, I'm trying to, not exactly a neighbor. All right, let's help out Tia. What do you think Andrew's talking about? There's a word we're looking for here. We're looking for?
Immigrants.
A little more verb, please. We're looking for? Immigrants. Yeah, what are immigrants, Tia?
People who deported something like, I don't know.
People who are deported? They can be. But you got the moving from what did you say? Moving from?
Place to place.
Right, and specifically, immigrants are people that come to this country from somewhere else. Great. Who else dreams the American dream? I know you talked about immigrants with Miss Catlett. Who else? Tracking Vargas.
All right, so in this example, the teacher actually uses several different formats, but I want to talk about the point when the student is right there on the edge of being able to answer the question, and the teacher provides a cue. So he reminds her, hey, you talked about this in your writing class. And he's trying to trigger her memory or trying to trigger some association with that word and reminding her, hey, you should know this response. It didn't work. And so he moved on to a different one. But that would be how that would work. So hopefully in the future, when the teacher provides a cue, that will help the student. All right. So format 4 is when another student provides a cue or a hint or an example, and the initial student uses that to find the answer. Let's look at an example video.
ln of 1 over the cube root of e. So Zanaya, change your answer.
Negative 1/3.
Good. Last one. ln of 1 over the 5th root of e squared. ln of 1 over the 5th root of e squared. I think Algethea, you're the only one that hasn't gone.
Negative 5.
Try again. It was the 5th root.
So it's 1/5. And then square.
You said negative 5 halves.
And then 5.
Someone explain what her mistake is, and then she'll be able to correct it. Don't give her the answer, though. Sinis.
So when you get the cube root or the 5th root or anything, that's the denominator of the fraction. So you have 5 halves, but the 5 is supposed to be in the denominator. And then
That's good enough. So what's the answer?
So it's 2/5? Negative 2/5.
Good. Okay, let's sit.
Okay, so in this video, the student was really struggling with being able to answer the question, but when another student in the class was able to kind of give some hints about the process and the procedure for that particular math problem. And I'm going to be real honest. Holy moly, that was so difficult. Okay. But the student was able to use that cue to get to the correct answer by the end. Okay, so when we're talking about cues and hints and questions that both students and teachers can use, we want those to be triggers for this, not triggers in that sense, but we want them to trigger something in the brain where the student is able to use that information to do real thinking. So the cues and the hints and the questions are not meant to be really easy or to give away the answer. It's to help the student make that gap wherever some learning might have been missed or some understanding may have been forgotten. So you can ask students to the place where an answer can be found. So, for example, who can tell James where he could find the answer? You could provide the next step in the process. So who can tell James what the first thing he should do is? You can provide another name for the term that is problematic. Who can tell James what denominator means? And you can identify the mistake. Who can explain to James what he did wrong here? Okay, so all of those things are not giving the answer. They're providing resources or hints to the student on how they can answer correctly if they think about it. I would also like to add that you can also ask students or help students to ask their own questions in regards to the questions you ask them. So if a teacher, like a science teacher asked, what's the speed of the magnetic flux? Right? I don't know. Right? And we say, I don't know because what? We don't know what magnetic flux means, right? So as adults, we have learned to ask clarifying or follow-up questions to the question being asked to us, like, I need some more information here. We have to teach that to our students. So if you can help students learn to say, I'm actually not clear on what magnetic flux is, or can you define magnetic flux for me? Or can you explain what that means? Or even, I need a second to look back at my notes, right? So if we can teach students how to advocate for themselves in a professional way, that is going to decrease the likelihood that they say, I don't know. Because when we get some really difficult questions, sometimes we need time, right? Even as adults, we need to say, okay, hold on, let me Google that. Let me go back in my notes. Let me go back through my email. Let me look that up. Or what do you mean by this particular part? What are you looking for in this request? So we need to teach those skills to our students. But let's be honest here. It doesn't always go very smoothly. Even when we are really pushing and we've given every bit of help that we can, there are some students who will continue to do the passive shrug or a sarcastic I don't know, and we know at that point that it has turned into defiance. But we want to make sure that we've gone through the steps beforehand so that we don't misinterpret a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge as defiance, because they really truly might not know. So if we can provide that answer for them or help them get to that answer and they still refuse to answer, then we know it's defiance and we can move along the behavior plan for our school. But allowing a student to opt out, it only erodes your authority. It only is going to make it more difficult for you to teach your students and to keep your students accountable. Okay, so after we have gotten our students used to the idea that my teacher is not going to let me opt out, I'm going to have to answer the question if my teacher asks me, students will begin to offer up information and then regurgitate those correct answers. But we want to increase the rigor. We want it to go one step further. And you can do that by following up the techniques of no opt-out with some additional steps. So you can add at-bats. And that really just means you're going to add some more questions that are very similar. Maybe they're a little bit more difficult, but they're similar, and you're just cementing that student really knows how to answer these questions and makes the student feel good. You can also add a stretching activity, and that is where you ask for evidence or you ask them to explain why or how they got to their answer, really pushing them to stretch their learning. Or you can do error analysis, right? So what did you do incorrectly the first time that you fixed on the second time? Or, where was your mistake in your thinking? So we want to look at that. And then finally, you can add a star. A star is when you publicly celebrate the student's persistence or perseverance. Or if you want to kind of incentivize a good behavior, like, hey, I saw that you went back and looked through your notes, or I saw you went back through the novel to find the specific quote that you needed. And even just talking about the hard work that student did. And so making those public remarks like, yeah, that's the kind of work I want to see from you, or man, keep that up. That's really hard work, but you did it. I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Those kinds of things. Public recognition. All right, that's all we have for this week. Of course, you can email me or text me or call me anytime you need help. You can set up an appointment with me through my calendar, and I would be glad to discuss this topic with you in more depth if you have more questions. Thanks.